Today we are going over the solving equations by adding and subtracting quick check. So the first type problem says, what is the solution to x plus 3 equals 9? Anytime I solve equations, I always draw my line down the equal sign and I box off my letter. The goal is to get that letter by itself, to isolate that variable. So I ask myself, what's on the same side as x that I need to get rid of? And in this case, there's a positive 3. I need to get rid of positive 3 by doing the opposite. The opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. But whatever I do to one side, I need to make sure that I do to the other side in order to keep my equation balanced. So 3 minus 3 is 0. That cancels. I'm going to bring my x straight down. And 9 minus 3 is 6. So this is what I think my solution is. Now, just to make sure, I'm going to go back and I'm going to substitute it into the original equation. So instead of writing x, I'm going to write 6 plus 3, and I'm going to ask myself, does that equal 9? Well, 6 plus 3 is 9, so it does work. That means that x equals 6 is my solution. All right, this one says, what is the value of b if 11 plus b equals negative 8? Again, every single time I see an equation, I draw my line down the equal sign and I box off my letter. And then I'm going to ask myself, what is on the same side as the letter that I need to get rid of? And on this problem, we need to get rid of the 11. Because it's positive 11, we're going to do the opposite or the inverse, which is negative 11. And whatever we do to one side, we have to make sure we do to the other side. 11 take away 11 equals 0. So we can just cancel that. Bring the b straight down. And negative 8 minus 11 is going to be a negative 19. Now I want to make sure this is correct. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to substitute it in for the letter b to see if it works. So 11 plus, and then instead of writing b, I'm going to write negative 19. And I'm going to see if that equals negative 8. And 11 plus negative 19 is negative 8. So it does work out. That means that is my solution. If we look at this one, it says, what is the solution to q plus negative 2 equals 12? So again, I'm going to draw my line down the equal sign and I'm going to box off that letter. And now I'm going to ask myself, what is on the same side as the letter that I need to get rid of? And if I'm looking on this side of the line, I need to get rid of this negative 2. The plus a negative 2 can be rewritten as just minus 2. It's kind of just an extra sign in there to confuse you. But you need to get rid of the negative 2. And the opposite or the inverse of negative 2 is a positive 2. So we want to use that additive inverse and we want to add 2 to both sides. If we add 2, this negative 2 plus 2 is 0, so that cancels. I'm going to bring my q straight down. And 12 plus 2 equals 14. Now, just to be sure I didn't make a calculation error, I'm going to go and I'm going to substitute that back in where I see q. So instead of writing q, I'm going to write 14 plus negative 2, and I'm going to see if that equals 12. And y'all, remember, please, please, please use a calculator. I know you weren't allowed to use a calculator in elementary and middle school, but now that you are in high school, use your technology. We want to know, you're going to do lots of harder stuff. So we want you to be able to use your calculator in order to be able to do harder stuff. So there is no shame in using a calculator. Please use it. So if I was doing this, I probably would have typed that in my calculator, and it does work. When Janelle checked the temperature in the morning, she saw it was negative 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Later that afternoon, the temperature was 12 degrees Fahrenheit. Select an equation that represents this situation and define the variable x. Okay, so if we started at negative 2 and we added some degrees, which we don't know what it is, and then it now equals 12 degrees. So this is where it started at in the morning. It started at negative 2. It now equals 12. So in order to get from negative 2 to 12, we had to add something. So we're going to let that be the letter x. So that's what our equation looks like, but then we also have to tell what x represents. And in this case, x represents however many degrees it increases to get from negative 2 to 12. Select and solve the equation that represents the following real-world situation. A herd of 70 sheep needed vaccinations. After some of the sheep received their vaccinations, there were 57 sheep that still needed to be vaccinated. How many sheep received the vaccination? So since this is what we're trying to figure out, we're going to give that a letter. Doesn't matter if it's V or S or X or whatever. I usually just stick with the letter X. So since that's what we're going to try to solve for, we're going to give that the letter. We started off with 70. We want to see how many received the vaccination. We're not really sure, but we know we started with 70, and we know that we ended with 57. So we got to ask ourselves, well, how many did we do? We subtracted or we took away the sheep that were vaccinated. So we started with 70, we vaccinated some of them and took them on the list, took them off the list, and now there's 57 left. So this would be our equation. And then we would want to solve that because it actually asks how many sheep received the vaccination. So we're going to draw our line down our equal sign and we're going to box off our letter. And in this case, we don't see a number in front of X, so it's really important that we give it a number. So we're going to always, anytime you don't see a number, it's a 1. So we're going to put a 1 there. And then ask yourself, what is on the same side that you need to get rid of? And in this case, we need to get rid of 70. And since 70 is positive, we're going to do the opposite, and we're going to subtract 70 from each side. 70 minus 70 is 0, so I'm just going to cross it out. And then I'm going to bring down my negative 1x. And then I'm going to use my calculator or your brain, doesn't matter, but 57 minus 70 is negative 13. And I'm still trying to get the x by itself, and I need to get rid of that negative 1. And a really common mistake, don't do this, I'm going to write it in red. A really common mistake is for people to add 1 to each side. That is wrong. And the reason why that's wrong is because we're not subtracting here. It doesn't say x minus 1. It actually says negative 1 times x. Anytime they're pushed together, that means you're multiplying. And so we have to ask ourselves, what's the opposite of multiplying? We are not adding each time because this is not a subtraction problem. This is a multiplication problem. And the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide each side by negative 1. What is happening here? Negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1, so it cancels, leaving you with just 1x. And negative 13 divided by negative 1 gives you a positive 13. So in my example, there was 13 sheep that have been vaccinated. All right, guys, I hope this helps. Good luck on your quick check.